Welcome back. Now, fragile coalitions at local government level have been a challenge in South Africa. It's become a trend to see alliances come undone when interests no longer align. What does this then mean for the coalitions going forward? Are there any answers, or do the party's interests end up eclipsing citizens' needs? Ebrahim Fakir from the Socio-Economic Research Institute joins me now to delve into this. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. I think many became very shocked when they saw that Al-Jamaa the party now has a mayor in the city of Johannesburg. And I guess I suppose it speaks to the instability that comes with coalitions. What was your response when you saw what was happening in the city of Johannesburg?
Heidi, I'm afraid I can't say that I was surprised, because I think it's predictable that parties are going to now consistently engage in a process of alignment and realignment depending on what their immediate interests are. Of course, furthest in their mind is what is in the public, or is what is in the voter interest. And unfortunately, they appear to be all subverting the democratic will. Now, let's take each of their arguments in turn. The first argument suggests that, look, the parties which have the least amount of votes have all come together to band against the biggest. Well, unfortunately, that's how the representational edifice had broken down, in the way in which the numbers translated on the basis of the votes which were cast. Then you have a different option which says, well, the party which has the largest number of votes, even though they don't have a majority, should be represented. Now, of course, that makes sense. And it certainly does make sense that if you have a party which, in fact, also has the largest share and proportion of seats held in a ward, in a constituency, in other words, it means that they should be given, or at least be given some representation in Parliament. Now, the fact that they're consistently locked out, of course, is an argument made by the other party saying, but they didn't get a majority, so we came together and did so. The unfortunate reality here is that the parties, whichever way in which they crumble, are doing so purely and merely on the basis of what is in their own party self-interests. Now, once that happens, they start making other calculations. And those other calculations are, well, if I have to give up certain things in this place, what can I get in another place? Or what trade-offs do I make in one sphere of government, for example, local government, in order to attract or get something at provincial or national government? So all of these little pockets of support that they've got are being used purely to negotiate and bargain for positions which are dependent on what the parties, or what the individuals even, unfortunately, in this instance, what their immediate interests are. And so the furthest thing from their mind is the public or any other kind of interest. Sometimes it's even as niggardly as saying they're not even interested in what their party's prospects are going to be. They are merely entering these agreements on the basis of what is on personal and sometimes personal leaders' interests.
I mean, we heard from the newly elected mayor for the city of Joburg, Thapelo Ahmed, saying that he's not here to be a proxy for anyone, and he wants to deal with serious service delivery issues. And I suppose that is the concern of many citizens in the city of Johannesburg, that we are worried about what's going to happen moving forward when it comes to service delivery, because that is ultimately what we need as citizens, for there to be some kind of delivery of these services, and that's not happening even at this stage. I wonder if you can just shed some light on what we can expect moving forward, because it's clear that these coalitions aren't working. There's a lot of instability that comes from this. 2024 is around the corner. Are we expected to see a lot more instability in, for example, these bigger metros?
Heidi, let me put it this way. One doesn't want to question the bona fides of the new mayor, and perhaps one should give him the benefit of the doubt. But let's face the facts. Let's look at the reality here. The person has become mayor on the basis of a set of arbitrage and basically the abuse of process and the subversion of procedural rules in council. Now, of course, they've come together with other parties and they've said, let's put this guy in, and they've got the majority of votes, so he's legitimately elected. Let's leave it at that. But that legitimacy, the derivation of that legitimacy, is staked on the fact that an individual whose party garnered 9,000 votes, 9,000, and not a single ward, not a single constituency in the local government elections, is now the head of the executive. Now, let's make no mistake, those councillors, those public representatives, they don't themselves deliver services. Their role, their function is to represent the interests of the citizens. How do they do that? Well, when they go into council, they pass budgets, they consider policy, but most importantly, and here's the missing link, they have to conduct serious oversight over the work of the officials who actually deliver the services, who carry out the functions of the maintenance, of repair, of ensuring that the service is actually delivered. So oversight's vital and fundamental. But if you're a puppet who is going to be manipulated through process, but also through numbers, and you are merely, and they've said, I'm not saying this, the parties have themselves said this, that this is an interim arrangement, and this interim arrangement is dependent on us getting our act together. And remember what I said in the opening, if we negotiate something away in Johannesburg, what do we get elsewhere? The elsewhere in this case is Ekurhuleni. And what you have is you have a crude approach by two parties, the ANC and the EFF, let's call them by name, trying to think of how can they maneuver to get positions which they would not ordinarily merit out of the result of an election. And so here they've reached an agreement with someone who say, you can be a caretaker in the interim, and then we'll see what happens. And so if this individual says, well, I want to ensure that there's service delivery, well, for one, let's see how long this agreement can hold out in which you are a caretaker or whether you stay for a prolonged period, number one. Number two, how are you going to conduct oversight, particularly on the budget, on public expenditure, on procurement, on contracting, and vitally, how are you going to conduct oversight, whether it's a short period or a long period, over those people who actually produce and deliver the services? And if you don't have the numbers, what kind of accountability can you extract and what kind of oversight can you conduct? So that's the question one is left with, despite what the bona fides of the new mayor might be.
It's certainly a great concern, and I think this is just a wait-and-see game. But I wish we had more time. Unfortunately, we don't. Thank you so much for your insights. We do appreciate it. That was Ebrahim Fakir from the Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute.